Welcome to the second session of the Personal Development Planning for BCI and ESS schools. Today we will have two amazing speakers. I will not tell you the secret between me and the both of them because this will make me too old. But anyway, I will tell it. I will tell all of you about that. I was teaching Robert in his undergraduate, believe it or not, and I was Muzammal PhD supervisor. So this is how my relationship with them. They are amazing. I was really 100% sure that both of them will secure an academic job because they were very, very hard working. I will not speak too much because I think they worked very hard during the PhD journey for them to get the academic post. And again, every time while I'm on my emails, I say, oh yeah, Robert got that. I was so happy. And Muzammal got that. I was so happy. Of course, they always nominated by their students as a kind of the lecture of the year. And they published lots of work. Now the examining PhD student, they chairing Viva. So, watching them growing in front of me, it's amazing feeling. So thank you very much. So when I send them an invitation saying, oh guys, can you come and speak? Both of them actually said yes immediately. So I would really thank them very, very much for accepting to come and do the presentation for PhD students. I think the floor is yours. You can share the screen and make a start of your presentation. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Abir, for such a nice introduction. I think we can finish this on high note, I think. Okay, no, thank you so much. So I'll share the screen that Robert prepared. So let me just 1 second.
Yeah, for today's presentation, we've got like a variety of different things that we're covering, and we've kept it kind of informal in terms of the order of those that are speaking. So it's it might be some points that I'll kind of interject, or Muzammal will have some points as well. But the key thing is, Dr. Abir Hassan pointed out.
Yeah, good morning or good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon now.
PhD to academia.
Yeah, just a quick one. I noticed, I was reading on the internet about ADHD.
Sorry, I think your mic is muted. Hello.
9 and going on 10. And we feel it's getting a bit worse. Concentration is really low. I don't know or if there's any way we can get it checked to be sure what it is.
Okay, so I think somebody had their mic open. Could you please turn this off, Fahmi?
Seems okay, but they just called us about a week ago.
We might have to remove this.
If she could join a circle of friends to make it easier for her to make friends. But I noticed she's really active. We've added her to the football club to see if that can help. But with her academics, she's really smart, but gets distracted easily and can't really concentrate for more than 10 minutes. She can't sit in one place for more than 10 minutes.
Hello, Fahmi, can you hear us? Yeah. Hello?
We just joined the football club about 2 weeks ago. But generally because of COVID, it's been really difficult for the past 1 year getting enough exercise.
Abir, could you please remove this person if possible?
Being all over the place. So
I think I'll try to remove
we also enrolled her for tennis.
Okay.
But the weather is not been so.
No, I don't know
it doesn't let me.
Who is the person who's talking?
It's Femi Babalola.
Too many activities with also trying to study.
I think you can remove because you're the organizer. So
yeah, that's where we are at the moment. So I was just thinking probably if we got a second opinion.
Okay, that's perfect.
I think I removed him at the moment or here, and then when they realize that they were talking, they will come back. Okay. Sorry guys for this. You can start.
That's okay. As I was just saying, in terms of the presentation, we've got a number of points that we're making here. There's some that are more focused on individual journeys. And Muzammal, I know that I've had the order of slides here, but of course, maybe some points you're wanting to interject, or I'll pass it over to you, etc. But good afternoon, everybody. As we pointed out, and as Abir pointed out, that this presentation concerns the journey from the PhD to academia and reflections from our own journeys, but also kind of tips in terms of that potential transition through teaching, research, and also any sort of links with industry, etc. So taking on board kind of almost like case study evidence or reflective from us both, and ways in which from our own journey we've learned and what tips we could pass on to the rest of you. So Muzammal, if you could go on to the next slide, please. Perfect. So when myself and Muzammal were discussing this, we thought it was important to talk about the kind of our own perspective of the world of academia, then kind of like sort of individual or isolated kind of journeys, but they kind of intertwine somewhat, as myself and Muzammal, we've known each other since 2013, and across modules and programs and whatnot, we've shared a lot of these kind of experiences and you know, differences in terms of research topic and things like that. But within academia, there's lots of similar stories to tell, and also the critical reflections and what next. So on the next slide, Muzammal, I think at this point, I'll make some brief comments here to allow for you to contribute in, obviously. But what we noted is that, and I say this in all of the classes and programs that I've been involved in, is that, and the PhD is no different. This list that you see here, the idea of personal, interpersonal, professional, and enterprising, consider what you bring to academia on your PhD study. You know, what are the qualities that are expected in terms of interpersonal, things like research communities or research groups, or how you can communicate at a certain point and conduct yourself in terms of research. These things are all critically important. And with that, we always talk about this research pipeline or career plan, and that all comes down to, you know, many things such as your topic. You know, how is that relevant? You know, what are the key talking points of your area of research, and how can that impact and benefit society? And lastly, this idea of enterprise and development. So whether it be within the teaching environment, but also in research, how can you bring about innovative ideas and pragmatic solutions? And I think this actually is a good link to Dr. Khan, where his research expertise is sustainability and CSR, so looking at research impact and solutions. And I'm sure Dr. Khan has some points to make here concerning this slide.
Yeah, I think very well said. I think I would totally agree with what Robert said. But I think the world of academia is an exciting one. I think you should be kind of look into it. I mean, doing a PhD is a kind of a step forward to entering into the world of academia. And I think as a PhD student, you no longer like on taught courses. You are like actually part of the bigger academic world we live in. Not only in UWS, I think you're kind of free to kind of connect with anybody in academia in the UK or all over the world. I think when I started PhD, I think it was the basic aim was to just get a PhD, but then I think it all changed when I was actually introduced to the world of academia. And I quite like the fact the meeting new people, and I think this was the life-changing experience when I entered into my PhD journey, and when I entered into academic world and meeting new people, making friends, making that network, and it changed. It somehow formed my own journey to academia. Because I think to begin with, to be honest, I don't want to hide anything. I didn't have any plan to, I just wanted to do PhD. This was the whole plan, to just do PhD and then get a degree. But then when I, first year, second year, when I was meeting lecturers, associate lecturers, fellow PhDs who were already teaching, so I think it's almost like gave me lots of inspiration to get into academia, because it's such a rewarding field. You meet students, you talk to them, you change their lives. I mean, look at the example of ourselves when we've been to the honors, masters. I mean, we always find some of our teachers, they always inspire our journey. So I think the world of academia is very exciting, and it's something everyone as a PhD, I don't know whether your long-term plan is to be in academia or maybe in practice, but it's a very exciting field, given how much difference you can make in people's life. So but yeah, I think it requires lots of skills, knowledge, and I think almost like a new sort of attitude to work, and in terms of personal, I think to be able to connect to people, interpersonal, you should be able to maybe make that connection, network with other people, being professional, I think, in your conduct, in your research, in your teaching, and all that. So, but overall, I think in this slide, I would like to kind of summarize that it's a very exciting world in academia. Challenging, though. I'm not saying this is, as one of the highly paid and, you will make huge money, but I think it's challenging. But on the same time, it's a really exciting world. So that's the thing I would like to summarize. I'll move to next slide. Robert, you wanna say anything?
So yeah, going on to the slides here in terms of the PhD journey itself, and you might have noticed on the previous slide that we covered quite a lot there in terms of obviously yourselves coming into a research capacity, then you might do some teaching, and then going into any sort of academic role. It does go into kind of the regulation, the administrative stuff, all that kind of technical sort of stuff in the background of how programs and universities operate. But right now, that's a longer journey. But in terms of the PhD journey itself, the key thing to remember is that every topic, every journey is different, and there's different requirements and expectations. And what I mean by that is in terms of with your own sort of background research that you're looking at towards something like, the literature review or the methodological approach in research communities, all of this will be different. But and that's a good point Muzammal's made here about technology, that you can connect with people and you can understand the topic more. So I think the key thing is that you can see maybe with other groups of PhD students, a lot of PhD students might panic, or they might feel, a key thing we see in academia is imposter syndrome as well. The key thing to remember is that your PhD will be unique. That's the whole nature of it. And every project will be different. And it's really just immersing yourself into that topic, that community, to say, well, okay, this is what I'm doing. Why is it important? And where is the uniqueness and the valuable contribution? And that's what sets it apart. Like, and with the PhD in itself, with it being different, it can work on different timescales. It can work on different methodological approaches. But the key thing is that when you can see that there's a purpose for what you're doing, and as I point here, the health and well-being of yourself is obviously primary, then you can start to see the application of your work. You can start to say, well, okay, this is where I would fit within, from a research community to a teaching team. You learn a lot about yourself in terms of, what you're studying, but also how you can apply it to the classroom. And that's where we see is that, the research-based application towards teaching. So all of these points here, I would always say to my own students at master's or honours or PhD level itself, is essentially, tell us what your research is about. If it can be explained in simple terms, then it shows that you know a lot about it. And then you can obviously expand upon that. Then you say, why is it important? Who does it benefit? Does your work extend any piece of theory, etc.? And in terms of the, ticking the box in terms of the PhD, how is it unique and how does it make a valuable contribution? And there's lots of different ways you can see that. It could be a theoretical contribution where a conceptualized model or a frame of understanding is appreciated, or it could be via what research method you've applied. Like a lot of my own research has been through mixed methodology, so surveys and interviews, typically in that order, and applying that to certain contexts would be unique if it's not been done a certain way like that before. Furthermore, it could be a policy contribution, things like that. So I always say to my students, theory, practice, policy, and research. And I'll just repeat that again in case I said it quite fast. Theory, practice, policy, and research. And you say, well, out of these sort of four sort of pillars of where you could see a valuable contribution, where does your PhD bring that contribution? And when it comes to different communities, is it the research, the empirical fields, university, industry, or society? You want to see where your work can contribute to that. But of course, as we look towards going into academia, from PhD to any academic role, it's seeing where this can be basically transmitted towards the classroom. Where can you bring about teachable moments? What have you learned and what are you studying that can contribute to what is a good framework for knowledge and understanding for students? And that's where we see within myself and Dr. Khan's roles at the moment, where we develop modules and develop programs. A lot of that is influenced by our research, and where we see these are the key talking points. Research is based upon the outside world and how you engage with the outside world, and that's where you try to internalize that to the university environment to benefit students. And that's why it's important. You want to see and address these questions as you go through the PhD journey.
Yeah, I think.
You want to make, Dr. Khan?
Yes. I think it was the point 3 that you perfectly, kind of highlighted that. It was this point. I think I want you to highlight. This is a kind of, your PhD. There's lots of PhD out there, but I think that really defines, basically, the why your PhD is, kind of different than anyone else out there in the UK. Probably there's thousands of people who do PhD every year. So I think it varies from project to project. But I think I wish I could have learned that early on, because it was I think we all go through that journey. But I think the importance of having that unique, valuable contribution through your PhD. I think that's the winner for even from research publication point of view. From a PhD point of view, I think your examiner would love that. Your supervisor would love that if you are coming up with the, kind of unique, but also relevant, not like, talking about something which we cannot really, do. But I think the third point is really, really significant to kind of re-emphasize whatever Robert said, that, you must think about, how is it unique, and then what sort of valuable contribution it makes to the the academia, to the research, to the knowledge, to the society, to the to the world itself. So I think the purpose of PhD not to the change of world, but at least we can bring something new which probably helps other people to kind of in their thinking and their knowledge and all that. So I think that's one thing I want you to kind of. But of course, I think this point is so important. This is something very, very important to consider, because PhD could be really tiring, and I know I have been international student myself, working part-time, and doing PhD all the way, the managing finance and all that. So it could be really tiring process. So I think your health and well-being is it's the front of your kind of PhD. Without your health well-being, I think your PhD will be affected. So make sure that you really prioritize your health and well-being. That's why I think even going to the PGR cafe, trying to organize maybe PhD get-togethers, trying to connect with people, because PhD could be really isolated journey. So I think your health and well-being must come first, the way Robert said it. I think that's the key point from these two slides. Being unique in your PhD, valuable contribution, but also prioritizing your health and well-being. Okay. So moving on to Robert.
Yep. So a point I wanted to make out here was obviously it's the kind of hopes and fears, because you go into obviously the PhD or any job or academia with the hopes, and this is what you're wanting to achieve, the ambitions. So with the PhD, like for myself, and I'll touch upon it in later slides about my own journey, but the PhD I've seen as a natural progression from the Masters. It wasn't, and I think similar to what Dr. Khan said as well, that when you're doing the PhD, you might not necessarily look beyond that towards academia. But I hope typically from most PhD students is you want to embark on an academic career. So that's kind of like you say, well, okay, PhD might be 3-4 years, maybe 5 years if it's part-time, and then you look at an academic career. So it's a way of the PhD, it realises these ambitions. It realises a way that you can achieve these goals towards that, whether it be academia or industry. But of course, the fears are with the PhD is that it's getting to grips with research deadlines, and at the same time you're collecting data. But how do you express this in terms of your writing skills and the standards of that? So you see that difference in the expression of your writing from maybe undergraduate to postgraduate to PhD, and it's how you balance that with still having sort of like one eye on collecting the data and meeting stakeholders and participants, that kind of thing. But also one point that I think Dr. Khan mentioned, it with the PhD, it can be quite tiring if you kind of become quite enclosed in your own sort of bubble. in a PhD, if you're not part of good social communities in terms of speaking with other people, it can be quite a lonely time as well, because obviously you might be doing like a set topic, but a lot of your friends aren't really doing anything in the similar field or a certain method or whatever. So it's making sure that things like presentation skills and just being sociable and chatting to other PhD students and colleagues, that builds up confidence, because everyone's going through a similar journey. It might be different in terms of your topic and what you're doing, but it's the same journey where we're all still, we're all humans at the end of the day, and you know, you don't want these things to affect your health. So that's why in later slides I'll talk about time management and things like that. But it's important that, yes, it's something that you say towards going to an academic career, but it's also that these things take time, and these things require that you build these social skills, academic writing, and it does take time, so you don't have to put too much pressure on yourself. In terms of academia, again, that's where you can build that professional career. But again, it's very common, you know, especially in light of the pandemic, work-related stress and anxieties. And one thing that you see quite a lot of is this sort of term of imposter syndrome. You know, PhD students entering academia, they're attending conferences and they're building that sort of knowledge and experience. And it can be quite daunting, but everybody has been at that point before. You know, everyone's been at that stage. It's all about just immersing yourself into that conversation. You know, talk about your journey. You know, you if you're collecting data, that's unique. That's your journey. So everyone's got a part to play essentially. And although I've put these things in red, it's things to just watch out for, because as I said, everyone will get stressed at some point. But this is where people around you can help, and the idea of time. And I always say that word to my own students, or PhD students on a program or a module. Time is very important. Whether you plan ahead in good time, or you tell us in good time if there's a problem or a concern. So this is why you see things like in transfer events, like a Gantt chart, or you know, planning ahead. What are your goals every 3 to 4 weeks? You know, set yourself mini deadlines. You know, that's where you have control towards, you know, the greater deadlines of a submission or a conference paper or something like that. So set yourself your own sort of parameters, and that means that with that sort of control, you start to kind of moderate things better, and it should hopefully, along with conversations with colleagues, kind of reduce stress, hopefully. But as I said, again, if there's anything else, Muzammal, you want to add at this point?
Yeah, I think very well covered, but I think it's the title itself, you know, the hopes and fear, you know, there will be, you know, that very word, imposter syndrome, it never kind of leaves you, even from the beginning of PhD, you know, you're constantly questioning, you know, yourself, you know, whether this is right, whether your supervisor will like that, whether your second supervisor will like that. So there will be constant, you know, kind of, you know, those thoughts, you know, the fears will, you know, linger in your brain. But I think on the same time, it's important to see there are hopes as well. I mean, this is a kind of very unique experience, and I think not many people have, you know, kind of, you know, opportunity to do that. But I think PhD itself a very unique experience, and it's full of, you know, hopes and fears, challenges, and I think opportunities. And I like the kind of word, I like to use that word opportunities, because if I compare, you know, the beginning of my own, you know, PhD journey, there came a lot of opportunities, and you just have to grab them. You just have to, like, you know, kind of work around and see how you can, like, you know, can really get most from that opportunity. So I think if that's why the PhD, you know, kind of, you know, degree, or, you know, the course, the 3-4 years, you know, life just changed the way I talk about, you know, I mean, one of the comment which Laura made, you know, speaking at convention terrifies the life out of me. I mean, I can share one of my example. Dr. Abir remembers that first time I went to the conference in London, BAFA, and this is I think it was the very first year of my PhD, and I didn't know that I'll be presenting to people. I thought maybe I'll create, you know, there will be few people, other PhDs, they will be, like, you know, listening my PhD topic, but there were like 50 researchers, scholars sitting in front of me, and I was explaining my research to them. Honestly, the feeling I had, that vomiting feeling, to how to, kind of, I don't know how I survived through that, 20 minutes of presentation. But I mean, this was the experience. I think that one experience kind of changed my whole life about, and this was the experience that I got from PhD, because when you put yourself out there, when you try new things, you overcome your, kind of fears. And with that, I think you get more. And I think after that experience, almost like, it just becomes so natural to now even talk to people. Even if I have a class of 130, students in a big lecture hall, and it just gets better the more you kind of do it. So I think PhD overall, although there are fears, but I think that there are more opportunities, and there's hopes as well. I know we are living in a kind of strange times now with social distancing and not being able to gather, but I think if it's good to remember that you should have your hopes high and make sure that you overcome your if you have that kind of imposter syndrome, and if you feel like you're not kind of worthy of or this PhD or that particular topic, I think you should be able to talk to other people, and that massively helps. And I think, as I said, PhD academia, they're both, PhD is an entry to academia, and academia world is quite challenging, but on the same time exciting. You will have workplace related stress and anxieties, honestly, but you somehow kind of enjoy that because it's so rewarding experience to be in academia. It's so rewarding, not only just doing PhD, but also working through as a lecturer, as a work helping students, and I think that really become. But over the PhD, in this slide, I would like to think about the skills you have right now from the beginning of your PhD, and target the one you want to improve along the way your PhD. I think this would help immensely. If you want to be good at public speaking, give it more go. Try to get more opportunity to be able to put yourself forward, and honestly improves after the London presentation. And I think it really helped me to be able to even talk to yourself in this very event. So I think focus on some of the key skills and attributes you can improve as you go forward in your PhD. So I think hopefully, but of course, I think the stress and anxiety remain there. But as I said, you can prioritize your mental health. You can prioritize your well-being by talking to other people. University have counseling services, but I think one thing I really cherished during my PhD was making friends. And I still talk to them. Still, somehow, they become your lifelong friends. And I think this is something, given in current scenario, I think it's quite limited. But I think still there will be possibility to maybe form those friendships, and they can really help you to go along with your PhD. But also, I think your supervisor, you should have that kind of understanding with your supervisor to be not. Not in a way like you should have like that kind of close relationship with your supervisor, to that they understand you and you understand them, not only your PhD but also about as a person. So I think that's the tips I wanted to give. Okay, so moving on. So that's Robert's PhD.
Yep. So we wanted to provide just a little bit of a brief sort of background in terms of like the PhD and then academia for us both. So in terms of my own journey, the PhD came about from a response to a call for a studentship in terms of entrepreneurship education. And this was slightly different from what I've done before in terms of masters and the honours dissertation, which focused more on industry and small business. But it did relate to enterprise and entrepreneurs managing SMEs. So there was a slight kind of movement there from industry to education. But that was an example early on of how I was able to apply some knowledge from industry towards academia. And that then led to the PhD starting in 2013-14 towards defending that at the end of 2017 towards 2018. And I think there was some questions here about the Viva experience and questions and whatnot from those in the room. And that's important. Like I found in my own experience that going through the PhD towards like the transfer event and then the Viva, on the day of the Viva, the examiners were very helpful. It was developmental in terms of they're just wanting to hear what your PhD is about. And one tip actually that I could say at this point upon submitting the PhD itself, what I did was, obviously your PhD is maybe a few hundred pages and whatnot, but it might be keen, is what I did, to kind of, you summarize, you know, create maybe like a document or a set of slides to summarize your points across obviously your aim and objectives, your methodology and why it's important. Might be, you know, refer to certain studies that you read upon, and you know, you state why your PhD is unique and advances kind of like the field, and then your contribution. So these kind of key points that you're able to summarize might be beneficial. But when it comes to things like, you know, a Viva or a transfer event, these kind of things, I think you know, that everyone knows that kind of journey. They've experienced that, so they understand, and they sympathise that it can be kind of stressful as well. But during the PhD, one other key thing was whether it's an annual conference or internal seminars, to continue attending these. And that's where you can, I think this responds to what Muzammal is saying here about question and answers. That's where you can, as you're developing your PhD at conferences and seminars, you get that kind of regular and periodic feedback. And that then leads to obviously you kind of framing your work as you go along. And it means, as pointed out rightly there, you get to question your own work and say, well, what areas do you need to focus on? A key sort of pitfall that I've noticed in my own PhD looking back is that you maybe feel you need to kind of read everything. But then what is everything? You feel you need to research lots of different topics. This is where you can kind of, you know, sort of funnel it down a little bit. And that's why it's important that the key point of your PhD is towards the uniqueness. It's framing that. What specifically are you doing? And what are you looking to find? What kind of what research method are you looking to employ towards hopefully addressing these points? But as I said, during the PhD, you find that the academic years go in a lot more productively if you're involved in doctoral day conference events, seminars, but also conference events relating to teaching and learning. So you maybe not want to focus just purely on, you know, a management conference or an entrepreneurship conference. So it's also looking at teaching and learning. And then that led post the PhD, where when I was writing other things, the PhD itself led to kind of revising that towards the production of the book in 2020. So you always want to look at where can you get sort of like an impact or a publishable outcome from your PhD as well. Next slide, please, Muzammal.
Yep.
So, as I said, a key point was not just conferences related to your topic, but also teaching and learning. And that then helps in terms of if you're able to do any associate lecturing or tutoring in the classroom away from your PhD. That experience of teaching strategies and approaches and exposure to these conferences and seminars really helps. And for myself and Dr. Khan, we've progressed in the last 5 or 6 years from associate lecturer tutor role to program leaders, senior roles, etc. And it's where you can have that transition from a certain topic that you're studying towards how it is relayed and transmitted in the classroom. And myself and currently just now Dr. Khan, are involved in the BA Business Programme, and we're fellows of the Higher Education Academy. So this is where, as you move into academia, you start to kind of immerse yourself in what are the particular frameworks for teaching at university, what are the recognition or the certification that's required as well. And furthermore, as you see at the bottom, when you obviously, if you complete the PhD and move into academia, you're getting more involved in journal reviewing, conference attendance, but also doctoral supervision yourself as the years progress. So that's ways in which you can keep in check with the research community and get involved with any latest innovations. So as I said, right now, your PhD journey can be quite topic specific. You're in that sort of bubble of your topic, certain conferences, and collecting that data. But as you get towards completion, if you're interested in an academic role, you want to be looking at ideas of, you know, master's supervision or master's tutoring or associate lecturing on undergraduate courses. And that then helps as a good sort of sidecar to your PhD to say, well, you've done the research, but you're also walking the walk in terms of within university and in the classroom environment that you're able to manage and plan sessions and manage modules, etc. But these are things that might be more towards the end of the PhD journey, especially after any sort of data collection and the transfer event, etc. And I think on the next slide, there's similar points that Dr. Khan has also, similar to myself in terms of the journey.
I think yes, very. I kind of try to summarize my 4 or 5 years of yeah. I mean I was international student to begin with. So first I came in the UK 2010 August. So I did my diploma in business in City of Glasgow College, and then MSc from Glasgow Caledonian University, accounting finance. And I think at the point of MSc, this is where I think I decided to kind of get into kind of PhD field. And this is where when I was writing my master's thesis, this is where I actually kind of decided upon my topic, corporate social responsibility and disclosure. And I'm so glad I come across Abir, and I was searching the UWS lectures profile, and I was so glad I come across her, and I just sent her email, and then and I think that email changed my life, to be honest. So I think from since that email, I think I had I mean I can't even explain, looking back to the beginning of my journey as a new international student who doesn't really know about the UK life or even the language, but I think that move of pursuing PhD just changed everything. And after all those years of hard work and challenges and overcoming hopes and overcoming fears, I mean I ended up with a full-time lecturer job. So I think every international student, I mean because of the restrictions and away from home, it can be really challenging to be international student, because of when you don't have much when you're new to this whole new culture. So I think during PhD, as I said, when I made friends within my PhD community, and I think it's all changed. It just felt so, I didn't. There was no isolation. There was no. I think we became so many. We were able to solve each other's problems, talk about it, improve each other's PhD, and I think that this was the real deal breaker. When I put myself out there to pursue PhD. So yeah, I think with the help of Dr. Abir, and she really kind of polished me. She really gave me that platform to kind of emerge from that shells, because I mean from coming from a different background, and I think she gave me that confidence to kind of to become even more independent in my own journey. I think that's helped me through. So I think she suggested me to go to British Accounting Finance Association kind of conference, and then I also went to the Center for Social. So you can see, I think from trying new things in PhD, every those new experience helped shaped me who I am right now as a lecturer or as a researcher. But one thing I would really highlight, the aspect that I didn't just write PhD. I go involve myself in so many other, during my PhD when I was international, I was invigilator in university, I was student guide, I was working as a student buddy, I joined societies, I even created new working groups. So I created a working group where, all PhD used to come together, and we used to give 3 minutes presentation, and we used to, talk about each other's work. I shadowed lecturers, I became, with network, with talking to lecturers, with talking to school, I became an associate lecturer. And slowly, I think I became more independent researcher through this journey. So you can see it's just not about writing that PhD. During PhD, you must do other attending conferences, but also you must involve yourself into so many other things that are happening in the university. So I think this was the real deal breaker for me, because I've seen some of the my fellow PhD who just wrote PhD and perfect. I think they defended really well, but I think all these experiences really shaped me. They really helped me to kind of become better at in my academic job. So I think I would highly recommend that you should definitely involve yourself in all other different extracurricular kind of activities. Why about 2017 I got minor corrections, very happy. And then job hunt, I think this is where the real difficulties start because of international, because of kind of visa restrictions. But I mean, never give up. You must try. I was sending 10, 15 applications every week, and it took me a while to get, but eventually I think, and I can speak on behalf of many students, international students who did PhD and they got job in UK. So I think it's possible. So I think this was the point of my PhD journey. But academic, similar to Robert, I mean, from associate lecturer to lecturer role, and now I moved towards more business management subject, and then I'm current program leader. So after Robert, we worked together from a long time. We started PhDs together, so I think so that helped. That's one example. Me and Robert actually started a PhD together, and then we are working together, and it really helps to kind of form that kind of relationship. So I'm currently leading this program, largest program in the school, and then I'm fellow as well, publishing work, publishing articles, reviewing, and doctoral supervisor and viva examiner. So I think that's a kind of main role of an academic when you're into academic position. So okay, so Robert.
Yep, so as we start to kind of summarise this, and hopefully we kind of get some time at the end for any sort of questions as they're coming in, as we start to kind of bring this towards critical reflections and sort of tips and the hints as we go on, the academic role does change over time. So obviously consider your focus at the moment in terms of research, how it applies into any sort of teaching as well. But then as we see with the pandemic, it threw that kind of curveball in terms of how do universities, how does academics deal with that in terms of the classroom and student engagement, things like that. So as you're moving from a researcher to possibly an academic role, you're considering the implications, of what you're studying, but also the implications of other wider events on teaching, research, what you're doing, and the impact on students and other colleagues and things like that. Planning term by term is crucial. So what can you contribute within the classroom and where is it relevant? So you start to see as you're finishing the PhD, for example, you'll always have these sections like literally in the PhD, your implications and recommendations. So in terms of practice, and if you're able to, for instance, have any teaching position at the time of your viva, for instance, you will want to talk about, okay, well, this is what I think is important and this is what we discuss in class. If you're writing assessments or you're involved in assessment strategies on a module, for instance, what you're doing through the PhD and what you're researching, especially if it's related to any teaching or related to a core topic, how does that impact on the development of what's going on in the classroom? In terms of the PhD journey itself, but also your own journey in developing the skills and the attributes, as Muzammal said, all this progress takes time and commitment. So, you don't want to be too hard on yourself. You discuss and share ideas and you develop these collegial relationships. As I said, I remember the very first day I actually met Muzammal was actually in a PhD class relating to, I think it was qualitative research or research methods. And that's obviously developed into us now talking about, viva chairing or program leadership, university regulations in terms of teaching and assessment, So, you see that go through and, academia is one of these industries that you might have a friend that's moved to the other side of the world and working in another university, but these networks are very important in terms of confidence, in terms of sharing ideas, but also in terms of the development of your own place in academia, because everyone has that particular focus, that kind of area that they specialize in. During the PhD, I learned very quickly that, you have that enthusiasm to try and understand a lot of things, like, about, in my area, entrepreneurship education, but you still need to look at, okay, well, so what's the focus within that? You can't talk about everything. Otherwise, it'd be like a million words in the PhD. The viva would go on for a month or so. So, after that sort of first year or two, I found that it takes time to kind of funnel that down, refine it, and you get to see where your sort of places, your perspective that you're coming from. And that then means that there's a uniqueness there. You can contribute to certain modules, certain programs. And once you develop that niche area of research, that's where you can then supervise within that field of study. And then you progress that forward. And as I said at the start of this slide about implications for students, once if you want to step into academia, the first, second, third module that you're teaching on, I always remember the very first class that I taught in the first few modules, you take on board what do you learn from others in terms of, you know, the, as I call it, the sort of the science bit of module management, you know, the assessment strategy, marking and moderation, session planning. That's where you start to see the application of your research focus, what you're researching, and then you look at, okay, but how do you put that through the classroom environment? How do you plan a session in terms of teaching a class? How do you engage with students? Where do we see are the key talking points? And then you have, obviously, you know, technology and the assistance, especially during the pandemic. I think we're all upskilled digitally with the pandemic. All of these things are building blocks towards that. But the key thing is, at this stage with the PhD, is that, you know, if you're collecting data and you're studying and you're getting involved in other activities, research, social activities, you're doing well. During the pandemic, you're doing excellent. So you start to say, right, let's just look at this. What's unique? What can I add to the classroom? And what opportunities can I find out there? And as I said, myself and Dr. Crammond, we're all here to support you, as well as the postgraduate research team as well. And it's just about saying, where can you bring about and show your personality and say, this is why I've researched and this is what I can contribute. And it's just finding the opportunities. And as Muzammal said, the PhD journey, try and enjoy it with other things that you can do. I think there might be some other points, Muzammal, that you want to add at this stage.
Yeah, I think it's the 2 points which I want to make is the collegial relationships. I think that's so vital for your academic career. I know PhD, you know, during PhD, you know, it's so easy to just, you know, kind of, you know, be too focused on your PhD and you want to write a perfect thesis and, you know, you want to do better in your, you know, PhD kind of journey. But I think it's so important to, you know, pay attention to the long term, you know, what you really want to do. If you really want to be in academia, then I think you should start working even from the very first day of your PhD, you know, to maybe start collegial relationships with fellow PhDs, with, you know, lecturers, you know, find out their information from, you know, their website, and then maybe send an email. If you can't see them in person, say, oh, I like your work, you know, I mean, this starts the, you know, you know, you can close, you know, those barriers. If you know, start, you know, talking to people, you know, they start introducing yourself, who you are, you know, your research interest. And I think this one thing helped me as an international student to make more kind of collegial relationships within the university, and this eventually helped me to, you know, get where I am right now. But also, I think if you want to be in academia, you must prepare to be a teacher. I think this is a very noble profession, and you're dealing with vulnerable students. Honestly, sometimes, you know, they just need a direction, and I think you are that person who can really change their lives. So I think, so during PhD, you can maybe become a better at research. Maybe you're master of the research methods and you know, you're best in your field and all that. But you must also kind of, you know, think about becoming a you know, respected, you know, teacher, or have that attitude to be a teacher who can, you know, work along students, who can really, you know, kind of make some sort of difference in their life. Because I think teaching is just not like, you know, putting slides up there and then talking to them. But I think you must, you know, kind of understand your students, to be able to connect with them, to be able to inspire them. I always use that word. You know, I think this is such a noble, you know, profession, and you should be able to, you know, kind of inspire these young people who are maybe still thinking what they really want to do in future, or what they really want to. So I think, so PhD is not just about, you know, academia is not just about research. I think it's also about becoming a person who can really inspire these young people, and I think this is so rewarding and that's the part I really enjoy about this work. I know in academic job, when you meet students, when you know, kind of, you know, taught them through, and when you see them, you know, succeeding on LinkedIn, it just gives you that satisfaction. So I think I would highly recommend to, you know, pay attention to the collegial relationship, but also how you can become a, you know, kind of a better sportive teacher, who can really, you know, make difference. Okay, so moving on to the next slide.
Yeah, I think this was just to add on to the previous slide, and it ties in with what we said about, you know, imposter syndrome, your health and well-being. The main thing is that we're all on that same journey through the PhD to academia, to whether it's, you know, a publications pipeline or getting that teaching opportunity. But just to kind of summarise, I think Muzammal highlighted this really well. The mentoring and the conversation is important, and that's where it builds upon, you know, what could be 1 or 2 years of new friends during the PhD journey. That can very quickly turn into, well, you're working on module teams together, program teams, and it becomes lifelong friendships and research teams, that kind of thing. Seizing the right opportunities, and I think Muzammal listed a number of different roles that he did during the PhD, which is excellent. And you see where it's maybe a little bit of kind of supervision within maybe a master's or undergraduate, and then you work on that and make build into maybe working on a module and things like that. And these are things through the sort of associate to teaching fellow roles that as you get involved in these things, you see which topics, what particular programs and things like that you can get involved in. And a lot of PhD students might be doing like a PhD at one institution and maybe associate lecture at another, or some research associate work in another. You sometimes see that, but the key thing is that during the PhD, especially after the transfer event, and you kind of go over that hill in terms of, you know, the initial, you've passed that first sort of hurdle, you're collecting data, you might see yourself have that kind of opportunity to look beyond the PhD somewhat and say, well, as that's still progressing, where can you apply this? And you see that across universities, supervision, associate lecturing, and tutoring roles are commonly available there. And with that, again, it's getting involved in probably 1 or 2 sort of national conferences a year sort of thing. You might attend them, get involved in special interest groups as well. And you find that simply, like a conference I'm going to next week, there's a number of tracks, as they call it, or special interest groups. And you'll find that just by joining one of these, for instance, it could be maybe 20 members in a particular group within this conference, but they're from across, you know, the UK or international, and that's you yourself involved in opportunities for maybe collaborative work, you know, whether it be, you know, future book chapters or journal articles, things like that, conferences, and the social network aspect of academia. That's where these things can grow, and that's where you can start to gain that confidence, because when you have these more developmental conversations, and I think this was pointed out in the chat by another attendee, that when it comes to conferences, if you're having these conversations around it, you just see what's already there, that we're all people at the end of the day. We've all got, you know, maybe the odd anxiety, or you might get stressed sometimes, but it gives you that confidence just to get involved with that social aspect. And this basically, as we put, it's all down to making sure your health and well-being, that's a priority. And I think the next slide is kind of just tips and sort of hints going forward. So as you can see there, it's that balance. You know, yes, during the PhD, you're still developing as an academic, of course, you're starting out, so it's developing the writing skills and the presentation skills, but just some points at the right-hand side, especially going on to a potential career in academia. These are just some examples of what kind of things you're looking out for. So, you know, after the PhD in a teaching role, you know, some form of module management or research supervision, you're keeping the conference attendance going in a couple of areas, a couple of conferences, getting involved in any interest groups or committees, and that can follow on from any doctoral day stuff that you're doing at the moment. And then if you're in a research role or more of a research capacity, it's looking at any sort of grant funding and getting involved with journals, etc. At the moment, myself and Muzammal, we're involved in some sort of consultancy, whether it be with KTPs or research groups. You might see that kind of as it goes further in the academic, maybe 3 to 5 years after your first academic role. But these opportunities come about when you've got that track record of, you've done the PhD, you're involved in conferences, and you start to turn your PhD into publications. So all of these things are still a chronology. You know, it's a step towards different things as you go along, but it's all in good time. And as Muzammal's pointed out as well, it's obviously the health and well-being and the idea of community which then leads to these opportunities, because the conversations build your confidence and that leads to opportunities. And I think, Muzammal, if there's anything else you want to add here?
I think one thing was I don't know if many people, if we used to go to PGR sessions. Every session they used to organize, we used to go to there, and specifically the one they do about teaching. And I think that's the very, and I would highly recommend that, if you can all do that, if you want to be like, be in academia, because that was even a stepping stone towards, getting the CCL lectureship. So I think the PGR courses are very important, and I think they do that every year. I'm not sure how does that happen, maybe online, but I used to attend each of them, and they really help. But I also suggested them, like, okay, so we I think three or four PhD students gathered together, and then we suggested them, okay, we want to do this session, to help other PhD, and they accepted it, and then we did that. And we also kind of, ran some of the societies along with PGR, and they really like that. So I would highly recommend maybe connecting with the PGR's training sessions, because they could be really useful. But anything here I think is listed here. I think that's quite important. But I would also recommend maybe start looking at the academics, and then look at their professional life and what sort of things they do. And I think that also helped. And you can talk to your supervisor. I think they are refined academics, so I think you can take that interest, you can ask them question, what does academic career look like, and then you can start working on that even during your PhD. So I think getting to know academic career is so important. This will help you to actually get prepared for the challenges ahead in this career. So I think connecting with people, I think is, as I said, I'm repeating that again and again because it helps. So I think connecting with PGR, seeing what training they're doing, but also I think ask question to these academics, the one you have in your school, and especially your supervisors, and say how they manage their teaching, how they manage their students, how they manage their assessments and all that, how they prepare lecture, talk about these things, and then they'll be happy to talk to you through about that. So I think that's the one thing I wanted to kind of highlight. Okay.
Yep, so just to summarise, these were just the final points, because we covered quite a lot there, but it's all just about this transition through gaining that confidence in your research topic towards the PhD pass in the academia. It's always just looking at, as you move towards that completion, how does this relate to the classroom? What can you build in terms of experience and skills towards being that educator as well as the academic? Being a part of or building a good research community. Muzammal had a great example within the Paisley campus, where he had a good sort of a social kind of community of other PhD students, but also looking at conferences as well. In terms of especially during and post-pandemic, this idea of latest teaching innovations and strategies, so that's another sort of learning curve for us all. What can we do amidst the pandemic? Hybrid learning, on and on campus education, etc. And the key thing, as I said, set yourself these mini deadlines. Planning is key, and managing your time helps towards that. I'm not sure if we've put our emails on the slides here, but of course, I'm sure Dr. Khan agrees that if there's any questions, just let us know, and we're always happy to answer any questions, whether it's here or after today's presentation. And thanks very much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much for both of you for first of all for agreeing to come and do this presentation. It's fantastic. I will just kind of do the poll if you don't mind, guys. Can you see it? Oh yeah, that's fine. That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
But if anyone have any question, they can ask us now if we have time to
Unfortunately, we don't have time because I have another meeting at 1.
Okay.
But may I ask you, please, if you don't mind, can you send me the slides and I will share it with the recording? I still looking for some way to send you the link for the recording for last week and for this week. So I never forget. I will definitely send back to you the recording for last week and the recording for this week and the slides for both 2 weeks. Thank you very, very much for both Muzammal and Rupert. It was really, really very interesting. I think that even from the answers of the poll, they all 100% found it very, very useful. I think you will get many emails once you send me the slides or insert your emails in the slide, and I will pass it to all PhD students. Thank you very, very much again, and thank you guys for attending today. And hopefully see you next week for more sessions. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.